if you're wanting to learn to paint watercolor landscapes, then it's really a good idea to start with something simple like this, because it's not got much perspective in it, and it's really easy. So here we go, and I'm just going to drop in the cadmium blue and spread it out by squeezing a little bit on my brush to release the water as we go along. And I have found so far that I can get quite a lot of control here, and I'm going to drop in a little bit of yellow because we're going to have a slightly streaky yellowy sort of sky effect. Just a little bit more down here, and we'll spread that out. A little bit more blue. The nice thing about Naples yellow is that it doesn't go green when it hits blue. You get a sort of slightly grey tone, so that's a good thing. So there we are, just a nice light sky. Maybe put a little bit more in over here, because, you know, watercolors dry much lighter than they start out, which is constantly confusing to all of us. So we're not smoothing that all out, I'm just giving it some variation there, and I'm hoping that as that dries, that will continue to have a bit of variation. Okay, so then once that's dry, I'm going to come in and lay in some mountains in the distance. And maybe put a little bit more yellow down there, right in the background. So I'm going to, I'm going to come in with a slightly darker but still light shade, and we're going to do layers of mountains in the distance. So we'll dry that off, and I'll be back in a tick. Okay, so back to the cadmium blue again. Now it's dry, and we'll just put in a line of hills in the background. It doesn't really matter how you do that line, and then we're going to just drag that down and then wet that with a little bit more squeezing on the brush and let that bleed down, so it gives you a nice graduated wash, and then we let that dry. And now for the next layer, I'm going to use bits more of a violety blue colour, so it's a bit of Windsor violet mixed in with my cadmium, cobalt rather, and then we come in with another layer of hills. And then just, again, a little bit more water, wet it and let that run down, and then we're going to pop the hairdryer on again, and then some more of the same, maybe a little bit more bluish, a little bit darker. And dry it again. And then again, a little bit darker. The hardest thing about this is trying to make the line of the hills random. The second hardest thing is wondering what the dogs are up to when they suddenly start to bark. Of course, technically speaking, I should probably wait for this to dry naturally, as I often have been known to say. But I want to get this done. A bit more quickly. So this is quite fun. You can experiment as you go along, of course. Trying out different things. different ways of holding the brush even. Don't know how that's going to work out. Now I'm going to try to mix up some greenish, dark greenish blue. So that's quinacridone into ultramarine, and then I'm going to bring in a line of mountains here. That might be a bit more green than I wanted it, so I'll just pick up a bit more blue. So now I'm just making that wet in the foreground. And I'm going to paint this bit here in a mixture of colours that I imagine would be appropriate for a mountain side. Trees, that is to say. So we're just dumping in a whole lot of blue mixed with quinacridone gold to make some dark greens. And I'm going to let that come down like that in the front. And a bit of violet, perhaps to make some darker darks with the blue. That's all going to spread out. Some pointy bits for trees in the distance there. And then on this side, we're going to do it much more violet, a violet-y blue, because that's going to be further away. So that's Winsor purple with quinacridone gold and ultramarine. It gives some really rather lovely, rich mixtures of colour there. And we'll let that go fuzzy. We'll drag that up a little bit, and that will go fuzzy. And back here, this needs a bit more reinforcement there. I mean, imagine that that's a valley filled with mist. And coming back here, as this is drying a little bit, we can add a few more darks going into the parts where it's darkest, and then some lights, some brights. Where it was brighter. And then I will let this dry rather than using the hairdryer on it. And we'll see how that turns out. Okay, so here is the sketch painting I've just done, which I'm going to now attempt to do again on a slightly different paper. This is sketch paper, and so I've tried out these paints with the addition of a little bit of black and I'm using this palette here just to mix things in the middle there. So I'll put that to one side, and I'm going to be using some, I'm going to use my last sheet of Archie's paper that's in this pad here, that was also sent to me by a lovely friend, which is nice. I'm not dropping hints, by the way, don't get me wrong, I'm just saying that I've had some lovely things that I've been able to use to share with you, so that's really nice. So I don't want to make it, I'm not going to make it as big as this piece of paper. I'm going to make it approximately the same size as that. So I'm just going to I was going to do it on this Bao sheet. This is Bao paper, which is also not too bad. Another gift, actually, come to think of it. But I didn't like the ratio. The height versus the width of the paper isn't quite right for what I wanted to do. So what I wanted was something a little bit higher. So I'm just going to give myself an outline like that. And then I'm going to move that down a bit. Move down to about there. So that's just to give me a rough indication. So it'll be just be sitting in the middle of that piece of paper. And so the sketch I will have up on the website for you to use if you want to use that. I'm going to start off with the house, which I'm going to put just over a third of the way across, and somewhere slightly less than halfway up, so around about here. Try not to put the centre of interest, which of course in this particular case is the house. Don't put that too close to the centre. That's sort of wall. I'll just sit down. I can't draw if I'm standing up, can I? So this is an Italian view, Umbria, where Assisi and these paints are to be found. And the characteristic architecture there, you can call it that, it has a very low slope to the roof, not at all steep, because they don't get much snow there, so they don't have to have steep roofs to let snow fall off of. And then the walls are relatively high, probably because Italy, having been inhabited by the Romans for a long time, I expect they probably were so good at building that they wanted to make their buildings tall. I don't know. Anyway, so right up the top there, the windows tend to disappear into the eaves of the house. The doorways are often arched like that and relatively small. And then there'll probably be a few sort of masonry lumps standing around there. So then the hills of Umbria are rounded. So in the background we would have some rounded hills sort of rolling away into the distance there. And then the characteristic tree is those tall, dark cypresses, I suppose they are. We have them here. Well, yes, we do actually, in France. So they're very tall and dark and iconic for Italy. And then these little bushes going down here, and another little bush perhaps just here. And this is I think that's a bit too tall. I've made that a bit high. So just a little bush here and another one here. I'm just copying my own sketch. So, and then that's where the roof line is, and that's the wall. So we're going to have the hill going up here, and then coming down again and drifting off out. And over here we'll have some more, slightly smaller because they're in the distance. It's more of these cypress trees. I think that's what they are, isn't it? And then in the foreground, I'm going to imagine, so that's going to go up there like that. And then imagine the foreground has got kind of arable field, so something growing, maybe corn in the foreground here. And over here, perhaps there might be a small vineyard or something like that. Okay, so that's the sketch. And now I'm going to try out this brush here, this one that came with the set, and we'll see how that goes. So let's just wet the sky. First of all, and the reason for doing that is so that when we drop the blue in, it can spread nicely without too much trouble. And on my trial, I think I used the periwinkle, which is quite a nice blue. Probably want a little bit more on one side than on the other, so it's quite a good idea to sort of dash across. And don't fuss with it too much, let the water do the work. So I just leave that to blend. The thing is, when you're doing your sketch, you tend to sort of just dash it in and then go on to the next thing. When you're doing the actual painting, you start to fuss, and then it never turns out quite so free as you would wish it to. So then the hills in the background, we need to do those in a kind of bluish green. So we've got two greens here, which are, you can see them swatched out here. I just did that. There's something called deep sea green, and then there's forest green. I suppose forest green would probably be a good place to start, since it's obviously a forested hill. So I'll put that there, and that is obviously far too harsh for what we want for the hill. We want it strong, but we don't want it like phthalo blue. That looks, that phthalo green, that looks like it's got to have a little bit more warmth in it. So various things we could do. We could try quinacridone gold. Now that brightens it, so that's not what we want either. Let's try some brown. This is chromite brown. Yes, I think that's probably going to work. So we'll just put more brown in there. And once we've got that reasonably intense, like that, we're going to have to try it out on a piece of paper, just to make sure I've got something remotely appropriate. Piece of paper, is there a piece of paper in the building? That'll probably be okay, maybe a bit more brown, and maybe a little bit of a bit more green, perhaps. Okay, I don't want to make it too dark. There's some quinacridone in there because I need the what do you call them, to stand out too. So okay, so we'll come in here for the distant trees, and also on this side here I'm just going to paint over where I'm going to put the trees, because they'll be darker. So I'll just put that in fairly loosely and then just drag it down with some water. Same here. And then I'm going to put a little bit of yellow in here. So this is quinacridone gold. So we'll just pop some of that in to let it sort of meld. I'll leave that for a minute, and I'm going to go to the roof. Now this brush is interesting because it's very, very soft, and so it's actually quite hard to paint with. But we'll see. does have a nice point. And I probably ought to put a little chimney up there. I think it's going to run into the sky, but never mind. Stop that from happening and come back to the roof once that's stopped. Once it's dry. So, the good thing about Arches paper is that if you get something like that happen, you can just lift it out. It's not a problem. Alright, I think I might swap to a brush that I'm a bit more familiar with for the next thing. And I'm going to paint the stonework of the little house. And that is English red. That's colour that is not in this set. So just to be perverse, since I'm painting Italy, I'm going to use something that's called English red, and then I shall add to that a little bit of quinacridone, or maybe this orange colour. What was it called? Hokkaido orange. Yeah, I'll just drop some of that in to warm that up. And let that bleed, and then afterwards I will add the shadows of the door and the window and darken up the roof as well. And then we need some more green. For these bushes here, so sort of yellowish. Put a couple of colours in there. Start off with a kind of yellow-green in the background, and then you can make it sort of darker as you come forward. So I'm using the mix I did for the hills. Yeah, I'm just going to strengthen the top of the hill there a little bit. Right, so maybe a touch of orange in the background here again. And some darks at the bottom. And pop some more darks in here as well. Should give us the edge of the building. So keep that side perhaps a little bit darker than this side, because here we're going to, in a minute, when that's dry, we will put in our trees. And so then I'm going to pick up some quinacridone gold, and I'm going to sort of sweep that up here. Using the side of the brush, so it's a kind of broken effect, so that it's not absolutely solid. Put some over there. We want to make this a nice sunny scene, so there's some more here, because if there's one thing you know about Italy, it's that it's sunny. And then we're just going to sweep in some strokes, some broken, what do we call that? Dry brush effect, yes, when you get that lively effect. And then some more quinacridone gold here to just make that more definite. And then back to the dark green, which we mixed with some brown to get that strong green, distant green. A touch of quinacridone in there as well. And then we might just put in some here where I said that you might imagine that that was a vineyard with the lines of plants growing there. And then we're going to come in again with the same sort of darker colour and put some shadows underneath these bushes to indicate where the trunks and things are. I'll reinforce this as well. There's one problem with watercolour, much as I love watercolour, it does always dry lighter than you would hope. It would be wonderful if it actually dried the same colour it was when you put it on. Anyway, it doesn't, so there we are. So now I'm going to add some black to this green, and I'm going to hope that the trees are going to be okay. Doesn't matter if they bleed a little bit. It's probably a good thing, actually. Okay, I think perhaps I can do the window now in the house. So we'll come in with a bit of dark brown or black or dark red or green, something like that. And we'll just pop that in, and then we're going to pick up some more reddish brown for the edge, the shadow of the roof. And I thought probably a little bit of brown mixed with a bit of orange for the roof. Maybe. Because they do have these sort of orange tiles. Okay, and then we're back again to this dark green that we need. And then we make the one next to it a bit more yellowish. I'll strengthen that a little bit. A few more of those trees in the background. Might be quite nice to have some really sharp darks here in the front. Maybe a couple back here. And then I want some quinacridone gold. Oops, quinacridone gold here. And we're going to give an indication of a corn or wheat field with some kind of a little bit of a vertical movement there to counteract all of the horizontals in the foreground. And we will also want some over the other side as well. And blur that a bit. If you wanted to put flowers in the front, you could easily put sunflowers or something like that there instead of the wheat field. I'm just going to make that a little bit darker just here. I'm going to soften that a bit. And the roof requires a chimney over there. And then we just need to drag that down a bit inside the door, because I'm going to put a windowsill on, something like that. So I'm going to paint a seaside scene, and I'm going to be copying this painting, which I did, I don't know when, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago probably. And I'm just going to do it quite quickly. I'm going to explain what I'm doing as I go along. And if it doesn't work out, I won't be putting the video up, so you won't see it anyway. So I'm just picking up some cobalt blue, actually ultramarine. Could have been cobalt blue. I was hoping it would be. This is cobalt. It's very similar. Actually, no, it isn't. That's ultramarine. Okay. So we have, well, maybe it's cobalt. This cobalt, what am I talking about? This is ultramarine. This is cobalt on this side. So we're just popping that in, coming down to roughly where the line of the trees is going to be. And I'm just dropping that in with a size 11 round brush. Now I'm just going to pick up a crumpled tissue, and I'm going to lift out some clouds just by dabbing the crumpled tissue into the cloud area. I'm going to put a bit more blue up the top there, and do that again to show you that if you're not happy with the strength of the whole thing in the first place, you can just do it again. So let's just do that again, and you can see there's a hair there. Get rid of that. Okay, so crumpled tissue, and we just lift out some clouds like that, and come back in with a little bit of a harder press like that. maybe one up there, and let the paint kind of replace itself into wherever it was going to go. Now, this is a little bit of Windsor Violet I've got here, which I'm just going to drop in on the horizon line, like that. And I'm going to also just pop in a little bit of quinacridone gold just on the edge of the horizon like that. And then just lift some of that out. Blend it in a little bit, and then we have a kind of a distant view, and then we go back to the blue. Just drop a bit of blue in. A far distant hill. Whether this is going to work out or not. And then for the beach or the sea, I have a little bit of grey, just grey down the blue a little bit. And then using the side of the brush, just do some sweeping strokes across like that. Don't fiddle with it. And then for the foreground, the sand, we're going to make that a sort of pinkish gold. So that's quinacridone gold and alizarin crimson, and a little bit of blue. Make it a little bit brownish, and then we'll just pop that in really loose for the beach. And then we'll want some more browny colours, so I'll mix some more quinacridone gold with Windsor Violet to get a nice brown, and then we'll just drop a few bits of brown in there for, you know, just some texture on the ground. And what we have to do now is we just have to let that dry. So now we're going to start little mini landscape number 2. And same kind of idea. I'm just going to wet the area of the sky. These are little paintings, just about 4 by 6. And pick up some cobalt blue, and I'm pretty sure it is cobalt blue. And I've mixed it with a little bit of something brownish, something pinkish, to give us a wintry sky this time. And I've left a little space there to indicate a cloud. That's another way of doing clouds. On this one that I did before, I lifted them out with tissue, so you get quite a white cloud. And this one I'm just leaving a space where the clouds are. And now I've mixed up some green, which is a mixture of sap green and a little bit of blue, a little bit of quinacridone gold, until I'm sort of happy with the colour. I'm painting from imagination. I mean, you know, you can do whatever you like. So I'm just dropping in some trees, and I'm just doing vertical strokes like that. I did a little mark there, so just lift that out. And then I'm going to pick up some olive green mixed with quinacridone to make it a bit darker, and also mix it with some Windsor Violet to make a nice dark green. And we'll drop that in at the bottom here. I'm still using the number 11 round nylon brush. This is a Drawwell brush from Japan. And then we'll come back in with a little bit more, even darker, and just put some darker greens in there. You have to trust a little bit to the process, because you can't, or if you paint loosely, the whole point of painting loosely, and that's what this is all about, is can't really predict exactly what's going to happen. So if we're going to assume this is on water, which we could, then we would just sweep in some water there like that. And then we're going to come back in and drop in the reflections of the trees underneath, which is what gives, if anything does, it gives the impression of water. And then on my original here, which I painted a while ago, I had some rocks. And they were kind of brownish, weren't they? So we'll need a bit of brown in with the blue to give ourselves a browny grey colour. And we'll just drop something in there. Like I say, it's never going to be exactly the same as it was before. It's impossible. If you do it like that, then one way that you can make it look like it's water is to grab a card and then just scrape through where the reflection meets the water, and just lift it out a little bit. I'm just going to do some dry brush across the front here. And then we'll let it dry, and then we'll probably put some of these rushes like I've got here. We'll put some of those in here. We need to let it dry now. So putting that aside, let it dry, and we go back to this one. And yeah, we need to define the distance a little bit. So we're going to come back in with some quite light mauve, violet, some kind of... Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this because I'm not totally happy with that yellow. So I'm going to paint the distant hills over the top of that. And then I'm going to put another layer in front like that. And then come back with some light grey in the water like that. Okay, that's better. And then here it was going to be pinkish, yellowish pink for the sand. So okay, now I do want to put some people. I just want to make these darks a little bit darker here, so add some blue to some brown. It's just random, doesn't have any particular meaning. Now when that's dry, I'll be able to put my little people in, which you can see here. There's a couple standing on the beach there. And we could put them about here, I think, probably be the best place for them. And while I'm waiting for that to dry, that one and that one are now both wet, I'm going to do some butterflies, if I can find a piece of paper. I don't know what that paper was that I was painting on, but it was probably, I would say, most likely Clairefontaine Etival, £140 cold pressed watercolor paper, which you can get if you want to go to one of our links. That would be highly appreciated. And then we get a tiny little commission from Amazon, although it doesn't actually cost anything to use. So now this is just a little bonus while I'm waiting for this to dry. I'm going to paint some butterflies in a way that I haven't done before. Now this is what I would call an icebreaker or a warm-up. I am suggesting that you just paint, outline and fill in water. And you can see where you've painted if you just tilt it slightly. And then pick up any colour at random and just drop it in. Try and make it a colour rather than mud. Just drop it in. Adjust the shape a little bit so it looks more like a butterfly than just a splodge. Maybe take a slightly smaller brush and pick up some darker colour for the edges, perhaps. This is one of the reasons I don't like tiny brushes, because they don't pick up the paint. Okay, so then we just try that. And then in the middle, you'll see the benefit of this once they start to dry. Just dry that off in the middle. And I'm going to come in, you've got a choice. Quite often I use a watercolour pencil. This is a Staedtler Karat Aquarelle. And I just quite like the way you can get a different amount of darkness just by how hard you press. But then for the antennae, you need a pen. And then I would leave it like that. If you want to, you can come in with water and refine the shape of the body like that. And if you feel that's too dark, you can lift some of the colour out. Adjust the shape until you're happy. And then do the same thing again. Suggest you pick up the paper because you can't see if you're looking at it straight on. Just paint roughly the shape, which is basically a fat cross. And then pick up your colour. Let's say this one's going to be sort of golden brown. Just drop that in. And then go for something slightly darker. So we want some more of that, and then we need to make that darker brown. What shall I use? I really want, I'll just use this. This is English red or Venetian red. Just drop that in at the tips. One or two little bits here. A couple of little bits there. And then I need to dry the middle a little bit because otherwise the black pencil will run too much. So then we're going to put head, body, antennae, and then we'll let that dry too, and so on. This idea kind of came because a lady said she wondered whether if she was to draw less and come in more with paint right from the get-go, her paintings might be looser. And I thought, you know what, you've got a point, so let's not draw at all. Okay, so we've got this nice blue one here now, so we'll just drop in some darker blue at the tips of the wings there, and down here, and here. And we let that dry, then we come in and somehow think, actually, I don't want to do that with that. I'm going to do it with paint for this blue one. Like that. Antennae. And you can, if you want, you can go round them with pen like that. But sometimes it's nice to have them really soft. And then carry on until the page is full. So another green one. I have to pick it up because otherwise I can't see where I've put the water. And there's all sorts of different variations that you could do. Darker colour down the side. And if you drop the body in with paint rather than the pencil, and then maybe just a little bit of shadow, that's another way of doing it. And if you feel that it's gone a bit dark, you just grab your tissue and lift something out. It's always possible to adjust. And we let that dry. So now, having spent some time doing those, I'll come back to this one. And my original here that I'm redoing has got some bulrushes on the front there. And so I need a fairly small brush for that. And some dark brown, so I'll mix some black with some brown. This is sepia, I expect, so I've just made it a bit darker. And burnt umber. So just a few darks over here, a few pebbles on the beach. And I think we'll call that one done. And we have the other little beach scene. And this is not necessarily all that easy doing people, but you need a fairly small brush. I've got a size 5 here. And one thing to remember with bodies is that you start off with a very, very small head. I shall put them in the distance, so let's put them here. So we have a tiny head for the man, and then he's going to be wearing blue shorts down here, and then his body and his legs, one leg. I always think it's best to go with the flow, and if your adults turn into children, then go with it. So then we want some red, because he looks like a little boy, so I'm going to change that. I'm going to say mother. With dark hair. And her legs. And maybe a little dog in the distance. Maybe a ball. And a little blue shadow standing on the beach. So I'm going to be doing the initial drawing on this in ink, and I'm going to be using India ink, which is actually Chinese Indian ink. Renang King is this one is called Encre de Chine Intense Indian ink. So it's all a bit confusing. Anyway, I'll put a link to that in the description below. I've done a very hasty sketch on here just with the side of a pencil. And now I'm going to come in and I'm going to start with the trees, and I'm going to allow them to kind of grow out of the paper. I'm using a piece of stretched watercolor paper. I think this is Lana watercolor paper. And I'm using a glass pen, which is a very nice thing to draw with. You can go quite a long way with one dip into the ink with this pen. Quite interesting how much you can do with it. So a very pleasant experience. It's nice and smooth. It flows beautifully, nice even line, and you can break it up as much as you want. And so my trees are leaning in towards the water, and I'm just going to take the main branches out to cross over one another. And I'm just enjoying this. I'm not don't have a particular plan. I'm not going to try to create a masterpiece. This is just an enjoyable way to relax now the builder has gone home. And heartily recommend this as an anti-builder antidote. And the thing is, just make sure all your branches as you go up, they divide and they get thinner, because you don't want a big fat one coming up the end there, misbehaving. And then once you've got enough, what you think of is enough trees, you can come in and just do some really nice squiggly outlines, because if there's one thing you don't want to do, it's to draw every leaf on the tree. Some people do. I don't. Too lazy. So we'll get the basis in, and so just think of the leaves as being in kind of clumps, and then once we've got these kind of clumps in, and these clumps are going to reflect your personality. You know, it can't be any other way, so whatever happens is going to happen. So then I'm going to just sketch in the horizon line there, which is going to go right the way out like that. And then down here we've got something of a kind of bank-like kind of thing going down to the water. We had it here, I'm working from this, and lots of really fantastic opportunities for just letting it all happen. So you've got your little beach type of thing there. These trees could probably do being a bit fatter, so we'll just strengthen them up down that side there with a bit more. I imagine the one thing that you might want to do with an ink pen made of glass is just not press too hard, so I need to restrain myself on that. But I don't know how strong it is. I think it's made from the same sort of glass they make Pyrex dishes from, so it's probably fairly strong. Anyway, so up here we're going to do a kind of scribble of shadow of the trees growing along the edge of the lake in the distance there. And then we need to come up a little bit. I'm thinking of Canada while I'm drawing this. This is making me feel like the Manitoba or somewhere like that, where you have these long lakes. And then we'll put some reeds down here. Some mace or bulrushes. A few squiggles on the water. You can take these branches up here a little bit further as well. And I'm going to put some colour on there. Okay, so great fun drawing with that, so I'll put that back for a minute there. And I'll just close up my ink. Now, if I'm going to do this in watercolor, I will probably just restrict myself in terms of colors quite a bit. And my usual blue is cobalt blue. So we'll use that for the sky and maybe also for the water. Or we could use cerulean, which I don't have. I'm out of cerulean, so I'm going to go with cobalt. Then quinacridone gold is always a good colour for the shades of autumn. I know I've got that somewhere. What have I done with it? Is this it? It looks like it. Quinacridone gold, and then maybe a touch of olive green, maybe a little bit of sepia or burnt sienna. I'm not sure at this particular moment in time. So I think, as you can see, the top of the tree has been cut off. I have cut off the top of the tree. I'm going to use my cat's tongue, my Zen Art black tulip cat's tongue brush for this, only because I've got it. And I'm going to start off and just drop in some quinacridone gold and a bit of burnt sienna. Give myself a nice kind of russety, autumn-y sort of, and I'm just going to put it in kind of a loose way, not really joined up, and a little bit more burnt sienna, maybe a little bit of blue, which is going to give me a bit more of a kind of shadowy sort of thing, and we'll just see how that goes with this brush. We want a nice variety of colours, don't we? So we'll see how that goes. And then I think probably a good idea to approach the sky. And let's just make it nice and loose. This is, you could call this a loose painting, and it is going to be loose. Don't forget to put a little bit of blue in the holes in the tree where the birds fly through, and make that nice. And the idea of kind of windswept clouds going across the sky, perhaps you might say. So then we're going to be looking for some green in the distance, and distant green, in my opinion, is usually on the blue side, so we want that to be a little bit fairly strong on the cobalt blue. So we'll just remember, this is pen and ink, this isn't pure watercolor. Now we're going to come back to the water, so we want a little bit of blue with a touch of green, and this watercolor paper is fairly quick to absorb and fairly slow to agree to be altered, so we will just try to make our strokes as definite as possible right from the get-go. And now we need green and blue and quinacridone gold for these foreground grasses and things, so let's just use, oh, and also perhaps a bit of burnt sienna. Now you can hold the brush in a different way if you feel you want the impressionistic style. And then we're going to sweep across the front here a little bit using a kind of dry brush technique, very quickly. And a little bit more down here perhaps in the way of blues. Now, I don't really feel very happy with the trunks being as light as they are, so I'm going to put some brown in there and some blue, because I remember being told once that tree trunks weren't brown, and I've sort of had a phobia about accidentally making them too brown ever since then. So plenty of blue in the tree trunk area, but not so that it looks ridiculous. Okay, now we might want a little bit more on the water at the back there, just to and maybe just some grasses in the foreground here too. And the last thing you want to do is to overemphasize and do too much detail. I always remember Roland Hilda saying you have to have an area in your painting that allows the eye to rest, and I think that's very important. And here in this particular case it's the water, I think, and this area here, which is the restful area. And but I do think it would be quite nice to have a couple of birds coming in over the water. So I've done those in pencil, and we will enhance those later a little bit. And the other thing is, having got to this point, I now feel that I want to bring this branch a little bit stronger. And to also bring one out to the side there to balance the way these are. Put another whole tree in there at the back, because that doesn't look quite right. So I just want to put some, I don't know if I can use this on the side. Yes, you can. There we go. Some nice random calligraphic marks. Might be easier to do that with a brush, to be honest. Let's see. Here's my black tulip. Yes. Yep, that's exactly what we needed. Some stronger lines down there, and this brush is perfect. You can see how that just brings, and then maybe a little bit more dry brush. I'm just going to do quite a simple sky with some nice little clouds, which in the way I do clouds is I just leave spaces on the paper. Just painting around that seagull. We used to call them geezels in the family. You know, it's funny, isn't it? Families have their own code words sometimes because a child will invent a word. And my children's father couldn't say seagull, but he wanted to, so he used to say geezels. And it kind of, I don't know, the family really thought that was hilarious, so everyone used to talk about geezels. Yes. So I'm just dashing in a little bit of blue in the sky and leaving some holes. So it's like a windswept sky, just like what we've got out there today. The sky full of clouds that are moving across somewhat faster than you might want them to. This is a piece of ceramic that I'm going to just use to mix some green. So we have that blue, same blue. If you want harmony in your paintings, don't use too many different colours. Use half a dozen colours like this, and then you'll have something moderately harmonious. So I'm just putting in now the distant hill, which comes down to the sea. And if it runs up like that, which is quite a nice happy accident actually, because that makes it look like there's some trees in the distance on that hillside there. So we won't worry too much about changing that. And then I think I'll probably put the sea in. I'm going to break my own rule as far as the sea goes, because I want the sea to be slightly different blue from the sky. So we're going to make it somewhat turquoise. I'm just going to use turquoise straight out of the palette there. And we'll just pop that in and just spread that out down to about here, where the sea is going to be. And then I'll probably use a little bit of quinacridone gold for the sand and just dull that down a tiny bit with a bit of green, because, you know, so we have slightly irregular there. Okay, so we'll just let that be. Now, the roof of the house, like I said, we're in Brittany, and here most of the roofs are slate. Well, they started out as real slate, obviously, they're not anymore. So we'll make that grey. And then most of the houses are either white or very light cream. Ours is a sort of something creamy, so I'm just going to put some shadow in violet in a few places, because it's a white house. And chimney pots going to stay warm. Well, I don't know, what am I going to make the chimney pots? I might leave those for a minute till things dry. Okay, so now the flowers here, we're just going to pop in a few different pops of colour and just kind of let it run. Thinking hydrangeas on this side with the pink and the lilac. And on this side, more like daisies or sunflowers or whatever with that kind of colour. And then we'll want a little bit of green, further sort of grass in the front. And let that all run. And then maybe we would imagine that the foreground here is very light, so we might imagine it was kind of a sandy dry, I suppose is what I'm trying to say, dry grass. I'm going to put those flowers in there. And just bring that background colour down to here, like that. And then we'll take a look at the seagull, maybe. The seagulls are easy, really, aren't they? Because when you think about it, they just have a sort of grey wing. Like that. And then a black eye and a yellow beak. And then yellow legs. So that will do for him. Okay, so now I just have to wait for that to dry. And we'll come back and we'll do the windows and the door and the flowers here, the grasses around there and the mailbox. We have to let that dry now because it's all wet down here. Okay, so that's dry now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in some flowers in the foreground here, and I'm going to experiment with different brushes. I'll start with the... I'm not happy with that one. I'm not going to do it with that. Let me see, what could I use? I want just some little dots for the colours, really, and sometimes that's better. Yeah, sometimes you have to experiment, don't you? You can't just get it right every time. So the idea here is to just have some very super simplified flowers. So I'm mixing quinacridone gold with a little bit of alizarin crimson to give me a kind of orangey colour. And some of them are going to be more red, and we're going to vary the sizes. So it's like a big herbaceous border with pretty flowers, and we might want to put in a few lilac-y ones. Perhaps in background, something like that. And then that's when I will use my rigger this is a Zen art rigger. Pick up some green and just flick in some stems, not worrying too much about the green staying green, but it's going to go through those flowers and just look like a random mess. No, not mess. When you do it, it won't be. And then we'll go back to the other brush that I had, which is a number 6, I think, for some bigger green patches. to make sort of leaves. And we don't want to do too much of that, just enough. Then I think I want to do something with the house. So I'm going to mix some dark purpley blue thing to do the inside of the windows. And I've chosen purple because I've made the shadows on the house lilac. So we just pop that in like that and then just drag it down a little bit to give a varied shadow in the corner of each window. And then probably want to just paint those gables, are they? What are they called? Anyway, the things above the windows. Then maybe we'll put some little blue shutters on. And make the door blue, front door. Make that turquoise. And then I think I'll paint the mailbox yellow, making quinacridone gold. And then the pole that it's standing on, just make that brown. So if you add Windsor Violet to quinacridone gold, you get quite a nice brown. And then we'll mix up a dark green using quinacridone and cobalt blue or whatever blue that is, and just put some grass in down here. Mustn't forget the red flag. Now I need to let it dry again. Okay, so this is dry now, and I'm just going to use some, I've got some white ink here. This is Winsor & Newton white ink, and I'm just going to use a little bit of that just to put the details for the windows in white. So white bars, a white frame, so something like that. A little white window there. Just to make it look a little bit more Hansel and Gretel-y, I think. And yeah, I felt that that had come out a little bit dark, so I've decided to put some touches of white. That's better. And you could put smoke going up into the sky if you wanted to, for the fireplace or whatever. And the other thing I need to do is to write mail on the side of the thing there. I don't know what colour that would normally be in, but I'll just do it in sort of grey. Oh yeah, nothing special. Today I'm going to paint this one, and it's going to be a very easy one, I hope. I don't know if it's going to work out or not. But I'm using my usual colours. So we'll start with a very light wash into the sky of cobalt blue, leaving spaces for clouds, and we just let those find their own level. And then I'm going to mix up some cobalt blue with some winds of violet just to give me a darker blue, which I'm going to use for the line of the sea. A little bit more blue in there. And then we'll just bring that down. And then this scene has got some greenery at the sides here, so I'm going to mix some quinacridone gold with some cobalt blue, and I'm just going to lay that in there and let that mix and mingle. And then we'll do the same over the other side here, maybe a little bit darker. And perhaps a little bit more bluish down the bottom here. And then I'm going to take some winds of violet with a tiny smidgen of cobalt blue in it, and I'm just going to draw a nice shadow here over the sand. We can pretend there's something off, you know, off camera, so to speak. Okay, so that's the first stage in this little painting, and what we have to do now is we have to go and have a cup of coffee, and we have to let that dry and come back to it and do the next thing. But if we touch it anymore at this stage, we will probably regret it. So I shall be back soon. That took 3 minutes. Okay, so the underpainting is now dry, so I'm going to come in with some more cobalt blue, slightly darker, so a little tiny touch of winds of violet in it, just to make it a little bit darker. And then I'm going to try to put in a relatively straight horizon line, like that. And then we're going to break up the surface of the water a little bit like that. So we just have an area in the middle which is a little bit lighter, and then the sides a little bit darker, that focuses us in on the horizon. And then I'm going to probably revert to a slightly smaller brush. I'm picking up a 7 here. And this greenery here, I'm thinking things like bay grapes and well, not seagrass, that's underwater, but a sort of, you know, the sort of thing that you find in a tropical paradise. So we'll put some sort of circular things on there, and then we'll mix up some green with cobalt and quinacridone and make that a little bit stronger. And then just, whoops, that's a little bit too strong. I think I might have got a little bit too much there, but that's okay. So then we'll just put in some shadowy grasses and bits and pieces. And maybe a palm tree, just leaning in. I've got two videos actually of how to paint palm trees, which if you go and look at those, you'll be one of very few people, because hardly anyone has looked at them. I don't know why, but I thought they were quite nice, because lovely bright colours, but nobody seems interested in palm trees. How can that be? Anyway. So a little cluster of seaside-y type of things, and then over this side I'm going to keep it a little bit more simple, and we'll just drop in a few pebbles here and keep it on the blue side, so as contrast to this rather hot side we're going to have some grasses growing up there like that. And then I'm thinking we need to come into the sandy area, so I like Potter's Pink for sand. So let's just drop some sand in the front there and bring it down here. And if you go over in places the violet will obviously go darker still, so you've still got your shadow in the foreground there. And then I'm going to put some texture in by picking up a bit more of the Potter's Pink on my toothbrush and some quinacridone gold, and I'm going to think shells and stones and things like that, so I need a bit more colour. I can cover up the sky to protect that and the sea. And then some more sizable blobs nearer the front. And it's time to let that dry. And then we'll come back for the final touches. Oh, I've just noticed something. Okay. So I'm just going to pick up some quite intense white gouache, and I'm just going to do a little bit of white calligraphy on the front there, on top of where I've put the spatter, to give the impression of water and sort of break that up a little bit. And so that's that. And then, as you can see, I've got I put some sails in the distance for some boats, and I've cut them out of paper, and I'm just positioning them and playing around with them to see where they would be best placed. And I think I might put them maybe the biggest one should be near the middle, but not completely. Something like that, with one over to the left a little bit, but you want to make them into your focal point. So something like that probably. Just put a little bit more there, and I could take some white and do a few spatters. If I could make it runny enough. There we are. A few spatters in the foreground there. But then I want the white to be quite thick so that I can paint over the blue. But the first thing to do, now I've decided where they're going to go, I need to make a template, and I'm going to do a little bit of lifting out. Because otherwise the blue will show through. So I've cut some strips of paper, and then I'm just going to place them to make a triangle like this, where that particular sail is going to go. And then I'm going to come in with some clean water on my brush, and I'm going to try to lift out some of the blue just by using that as a template. And then I'm going to take a piece of tissue, blot it away, take away my mask, and there I've got a blue area for the bottom of the boat, bottom of the sail. So then we'll do the same over here and put the sail there. Take the clean brush. You can do it with a sponge as well, or stencil brush. Any brush will do. And it doesn't matter if the line's not super sharp, you just want to get rid of most of the blue. And then we'll let that dry. I have another one over here. Doesn't have to get rid of every last vestige of the blue, just enough to make it easy to paint over with white, because that's what we're going to do. So now I just need to either dry that with a hairdryer or let it dry, and then I can put my sails in, and then we'll be done. So I'm going to get the hairdryer and I'll be back in a tick. Okay, so that's now dry, so I'm just going to come in with some gouache. And paint over those little triangles. And then I'll put just a very slight shadow underneath where the boat is. I think I might put a little bit of blue in here. And I might just add a bit more colour to the bay grapes. into the palm tree. And I think that's probably about it. A few dark spatters. Maybe I'll just put the mast in for the boats. I'm going to roughly put some water in the sky. I'm not colouring in the whole, I'm not painting over the whole thing with water. Just a little bit like that. And then I'm going to take a different brush and I'm going to pop in some very separated bits of very dilute alizarin crimson, and then some very more dilute than that even, some very dilute quinacridone gold, like that, and then some, let's say cobalt blue over here perhaps. And the key to making this loose is to leave, I think, lots of gaps for the light. Maybe we want a little bit more here. And here. And then we're not going to play with that because if there are no rules about watercolour, but one of the things about loose watercolour is that you're better off if you don't play with it once you've laid it down, the colour that is. So I'm going to put a little bit more blue along the horizon here. We're going to come down a bit more. And maybe we'll go a little bit on the darker side as we come down there. And I'm just going to wet that. And then here we're going to start the sea. So I'm going to pick up some indigo blue. Brush that across there. We've got a nice little bit of dry brush effect there, so we won't argue with that. And then just making it up as I go along, really. Tell you what I have noticed though. Just bring that down there like that and leave that for a sec. I need a piece of paper towel. Pasker. Need to dab that out. Expect you saw that happening. I didn't because I was concentrating on the next thing. There we are. All better. Okay. And then we're sort of thinking Bermuda here, or I am. I'm thinking pink sand, Bermuda. So we'll put some nice pink sand in here. And then let's go for a slightly greener blue for the water here. And then maybe a The line on the horizon is always very dark, isn't it? Strengthen that up there a little bit, maybe. And then I suppose it would be nice if this was, what's the word, melded in a bit. And this will be the first layer. We might have to come back. We will have to come back for sure when that's dry and add to it, because we don't know at the moment what's going to happen. But I do know that if I add water, paint to this sky at this point, I'll get cauliflowers and all sorts of things will happen. So we'll leave that to dry and then come back and do the next step. Okay, so this first stage is now completely dry. I just finished it off with the hairdryer to make sure that it was completely dry. And now I'm going to basically repeat what I did initially for the sky, very lightly going over, leaving some gaps, going over so as not to disturb what's underneath, so being very light about that. And then I want a slightly smaller brush than the one I've used to wet with, and I'm going to be picking up a little bit more alizarin crimson and dropping it in where the pink is, overlapping into some of the yellow a little bit. And this is where you need to trust your intuition a little bit, be a bit, you know, just go with the flow sort of thing. So you want it to sort of overlap. Let's put a bit more pink down here, perhaps. Just think sky while you're doing it. A little bit of grey emerging there, which is quite nice, because there's always a little bit of shadow under your clouds. And then down the bottom, we're going to put in another row, just close to the horizon there. It wouldn't matter if you get cauliflowers there, it won't matter too much because it will just look like piled up banks of cloud. And we can keep our fingers crossed about that. Now, and maybe we need a little bit more, perhaps I'm just going to put a little bit of yellow and pink in there. Behind those clouds, there's a bit of a gap, isn't there? So just try and hope and pray that that doesn't look stupid when it dries. You never know. Right, so then the sand in the front is also pinkish yellow, so we'll just drop in some more pinkish sand colour. Drop in a bit more of the same colour that we had there before. And then I'm going to come in again with the indigo along the back. So this is basically just a deserted beach. To give you some ideas on how to possibly do a seascape. You could add boats along the horizon. You could put people walking along the front. Could do all sorts of things. But I'm just trying to just indicate roughly how you could do the basics. And we just put some darks here and there where it's happened to go kind of dark. Just emphasize it as it comes along towards you. So you've got, there's not really big waves going on here, but just give the idea of water a little bit. Considering we're painting in watercolor, it ought to be easy, but never is. And then the thing to do is to let it dry at this point. Go and have lunch, come back when it's completely dry. See whether you want to do anything else to it. Softening all of those lines there. Okay, so lunch beckons. Now it's completely dry again, and what I'm going to do next is I'm going to darken the horizon with some more purplish, darker kind of clouds, because since we've got the sea being quite dark, I think that probably it would be a good idea to have the clouds in the distance kind of looking a bit like storm clouds. So I'm just going to dab in some purple coloured clouds along the horizon, bringing them down sort of a little bit unevenly to where the line of the sea is. And just sort of take them up. I don't want that going up that high. You can always use a tissue to dab away at your clouds if they don't turn out quite the way you want. That doesn't hurt. In fact, sometimes it can give a really good effect. So let's drop a little bit more blue in here and hope that that's going to spread, hopefully. And maybe a little bit more up here. And we'll see how that looks when that's dry as far as the sky's going. You can never tell. It's always a bit of a potluck, really. So then I'm going to bring in some, where it's a little bit darker, I'm going to emphasize it. Where it's light, I'm going to leave it to be light. And then for the foreground, I'm going to really cheat, and I'm looking for a toothbrush because I'm going to spatter. There we go. Here is a toothbrush. So we'll need a piece of paper we'll put over there, and then some quinacridone gold, greenish. So I do that, and then maybe just a few sort of neutral, slightly larger. Okay, so we'll let that dry and see what that looks like. So you have a couple of choices if you want to put a bit of life into this painting. You could put a boat or two just across the horizon like that. You don't need to put anything in as far as the actual hull of the boat goes, just the white sails, because that's all you'd be able to see at a distance like that. You could also just touch up some of the white surf that you've tried to leave a little bit of. So I'm using Winsor & Newton white ink for this. Just putting that in some fairly random places. And then you could put in the sky very far away some seagulls. Just come in closer so you can see that. can put as many boats as you like. Perhaps we'll put 3. Three different boats there. And as the white dries a little bit, you need to come in sometimes and just put a second coat. So that's the sky area wetted there. And I'm going to just lift the board up a little so it's on a slight slope coming down like that. And then I'm going to pick up some Caribbean blue and drop it in from the top and just let that drift down. And we'll just put more in as we go down, and in a second I'll just lift the board up a little bit so that it flows a little bit more downwards. And I'm going to this time put just a little bit of mauve in to indicate just a few sort of cloud-like elements as we get down towards the horizon. So let's do it like that. And then I'm just going to pick the board up and encourage it to bleed a little bit like that. So now we've got our beautiful sky. And then underneath the horizon line, we're going to put some sea. And in the Caribbean or anywhere tropical like that, tends to be in the distance, much darker. So I've just picked up the colour and I'm going to drag it along there like that. And then come down forward from there. And don't forget to stop when you get to the sand, like that. And then we'll just put a little of the quinacridone gold across there to indicate some of the sand, and we'll leave it like that. And and this bit we'll leave blank for the minute because that's going to be finished off at the end. And now we'll leave it to dry. So I'll be back in a second when it's dry. Now it's time to do the, now it's dry, it's time to do the trunk of the trees. And I'm going to start off with purple. And I'm just going to drag the purple down until it more or less runs out. And then I'm going to pick up quinacridone gold. And I'm going to come over the top of that. And then bring that down onto the beach. So by then the colour has changed a little bit because it's going there. So you have a kind of counter change. And maybe we'll just, because this one's not as blue as the other one, we might need to add a little blue to give some hints of green to that. So we'll just do that. And then another thing we can do to make the trunk a little bit more interesting is just to scrape into it. And I need to wait for that to dry a little bit before we do that. So in the meantime, we'll do the other trunk, and we'll just come in here with purple again, and I'm going to drag that round following the line I drew before, so like that, and then over the top of that with quinacridone gold, quite thick, and drag that down too, and that gives us a lovely mixture of colours there. And you don't want to play with it too much because that would spoil it. So we'll just add a little bit here, a little bit there. And then we'll just leave that for a few minutes to just start to sink in. And then I'm going to scrape into it a little bit to give a bit more texture to the trunk. Let's see whether it's ready yet. It all depends how thickly you put it in the first place. There we are. So you can do that. And you can do it with the broad side of a cut piece of credit card. That's what I tend to use, like that. And you can go into this one too. And just give it some texture. Because I think quite a lot of palm trees have spiky bits sticking out as they go up, don't they? So you can do that if you want, or not. Depends whether you feel that you want to do that. Okay, so now I'm going to start on the fronds of the palm tree. I'm going to do the one behind first, and just going to use quite a big brush and just flick down to do the frondy bits. Don't be too precious about it. You want to let the colour do the work, so as I say, follow the colour. So let the paint tell the story. And where you go up here into the sky, it's brilliant because you get the blue from behind showing up underneath, so you get these wonderful colours. And we might want to tie that together a little bit with some quinacridone, some Caribbean blue mixed in there, just to join it together. One up there, a nice green one. And then we're going to go into second one. So let's do nice, dramatic, frondy leaves, and we change colours. We don't want them all the same colour because the sunlight, where it shines onto these leaves, will give you loads and loads of different colours and lots of different appearances. So some you might want to press quite hard and give the broader effect, and sometimes you don't. And then we want some coconuts in the middle there, so we drop in some nice dark colour, some nice purples and dark blue, dark Caribbean blue and purple. We let that bleed a little bit. Let's stick a couple of dark notes in there, and we'll see how that goes. And put some cross lines in there too. So this one is a little bit more involved than the previous one that we did earlier today, just to show you a few more techniques. And then now I'm going to put in some bay grape leaves, which are a kind of round sort of blobs like that, and we're just going to vary the colour a lot and vary the size as well quite a lot. And if we aren't happy with something, we can always dab it out a little bit if it's a little bit wrong. And then let's put in some grasses, and we'll make them in kind of golden colour as well as green, because they'll be a bit dried out, won't they, if they're on the beach. So, and then we're going to have a few purple dabs down here just to give the shadow. And of course we need a few stems in there, so we're going to make that from the blue and the all three colours together, mixed with some quinacridone, is going to give us a dark green. There we are. And let's just bring this down a little bit here. And then I need some pale, very pale lilac-y blue, which is going to give me the shadow of the trees on the hot sand of the beach. So there we are. And I think maybe we'll just add a dark line to the horizon there. To indicate where the water gets deeper in the distance. And now I think perhaps the second layer of palm frond interest there. I don't want to make the sky too dominant, so we're just going to basically chuck in a little bit of pink. And the reason for choosing pink is because it's sunset, right? And the sky is on the pink side. So rather than getting all confused with trying to make a fancy sunset, I'm just going to make it very neutral. And I'm going to leave lots of air, so around the things like the lighthouse and everything, I'm not going right up to the edges because I don't really need to. And then I think some bluish tones, bluish green, very grey-ish for the hills. So there we are, and we'll paint the birds later, I think. Now we've got a choice as far as the lighthouse goes as to what colour we're going to do. I think usually they tend to be on the red side, don't they? So maybe I will give it a red stripe, red and white stripe. That's what I always think of them being, like that. And then obviously at the top here, going to have some blue because, or grey. And then the rocks. Well, my favourite rock colour has got to be Notturno, which is this colour. And just pop that in there. Add a little bit of blue to it to give us some shadows and just drop in a couple of shadowy spots there. Let that bleed. Leave that alone. Now I think I'll just swap back to my smaller brush. And I'm hoping that this is going to dry fairly quickly. The roofs need to be a nice, I don't know, greyish colour maybe, or should they be brown? That's a good question, because if they were slate they would be grey, and if they were thatch they would be brown. So it's up to you. Probably more stylish would be something on the blue-grey side. Something on the mauve-ish kind of side. Let me think, what shall I do? What about Antone blue? Let's try that. Antone blue. I think Daniel Smith do an Antone blue too. This is a gallo. And then if you want to make them varied, I've just added a little bit of alizarin crimson to the Antone to make it a little bit darker, like that. So different, slightly different colour. And then the one in the background there, we could do this one a little bit on the green side. And then this one down here, because it's front ways on, it's going to lose most of its colour. It'll just make that sort of grey. And then we want to pick up something sort of very dark brown or blackish for the windows. And we just paint the sort of top and one side for the windows to give a little bit of depth. Like that. And you can do the same for your doorway. If you want to put those lines of the window bars in, you can do that afterwards with a white pen. So I think that's probably what I'll do. Just put the shadow in, and that sort of gives a little bit of shape, a bit of perspective. And you don't have to use black for this. I'm using a mixture of, I don't know, some dark colours mixed up together. Anything dark like that. There's no door there. Okay, and then the harbour wall, I think I thought it would be nice to do it in two colours. And so I was going to put kind of, this is quinacridone red gold, and then underneath a little bit more shadowy, so just add some phthalo blue, for example, to that, just to give it, I don't know, just to make it sort of more varied. And then take that same colour up and into the distance, so it's going to get fainter up there. And then obviously have to do the steps. And this is another ladder here, so we just pop in some shadow on that one too. And maybe some darker at the bottom. That hopefully will sort of bleed in a little bit. Okay, and you could, if you want to, indicate some stones in the harbour wall just by dropping in some colour. That will mix and mingle quite a bit. And we're going to want then some pale blue for to give, oh, not quite that dark. To have some shadow on the houses. Pick one side and put the shadow on, say, for example, here, the left. And if you don't think it's dark enough, you can just add a bit more and let that blend. Okay. There's a small error there. That was meant to go down further. All right. While I'm working with the blue, I could do some colour on some shadow really, because these are white, these birds, so they just need a little bit of blue shadow. And depending on how much detail you want, you could put in their beaks. If you want. And a lot of these gulls have a pretty dark sort of tip to their wings, so you could just drop that in and let that bleed a bit, for example. And up here you can come back into the lighthouse, give a bit more dimension there if you wanted to. Now we have to choose what colour we're going to do our boats, and I'm sort of thinking green, greeny blue, something for this one, maybe a bit more green. And then perhaps we'll make the wheelhouse blue, perhaps, and a bit more shadow in there, and then maybe sort of red roof, just because. Why not? But then this boat, don't really want to put too much colour in here, so maybe we'll make this one blue. So it could really be considered to be white, and we'll put the shadow of the sail in. It's quite a big area, so we don't really want to make it too much, but then we'll put the man in a red. Wrong red. This should be this red. Plus we've got a couple of people up here who ought to be wearing nice red jackets because they're walkers, and then they would have jeans on, no doubt. Like that. And now pretty much the last thing is going to be the sea. So bearing in mind this is Cornwall, it's not going to be very blue. You just drop in some water. This paper is not behaving very well at all. Even though I'm barely touching it, it's bobbling up. And I am literally barely touching this, which is strange because up until now, all the pages in this book have not been bad at all. I've quite enjoyed painting on them. But this one, all of a sudden, is not behaving at all. And hopefully when it's dry, those marks will disappear. And I'm also thinking, what am I thinking? I'm thinking a little bit more colour underneath the boat. The boats are and in front of the lighthouse, perhaps. That's pretty shocking, actually, what's happening with this paper. I don't know why that's happening. Okay, so having done that, we now need to let it dry. Okay, so now this is dry and I've had a little bit of a think about it. And yeah, it's looking okay. And I'm sort of thinking we can put in a few things like a few shadows, for example, on some of the areas of colour. So a little bit of more red there, and then probably just to indicate shape, because it would have shadow on both sides, we'll put a little bit of blue there. And then maybe come into the sea a little bit with some lines. And I'm using gouache for this because if you use gouache for lines on top of watercolor, you can use ordinary watercolor, but the gouache kind of stands out a little bit better. So that's probably one good reason for using it to darken certain areas if you want to do that. So using different shades of blue to give some effect of waves and things on the, or ripples at least. And you can do as much of that or as little as that as you want. And you could paint in some clouds if you wanted to in white, or you could leave the sky as it is. You could obviously add a little bit, whoops. I wouldn't want to do that. I picked up something completely wrong there, but we'll just whoosh that around a bit until it disappears. I was going to say you could just darken some parts of the hills a little bit to make the houses stand out a bit better. And then really what I'm doing is I'm just going around and using watercolour here, just emphasising the shadows a little bit with watercolour. And then I'm going to actually use, for the stones on the harbour, I'm going to go around them with, if I can make that work. It's not my day today, is it? Yeah, there we go. So we go around the stones with the white gel pen, just to give them some shape. Again, optional. I'm just kind of thinking of things as I go along, how I would do this. Maybe just do some without any colour on the inside like that. And then probably I would turn now to the Pigma pen, and as I said at the beginning, this is where you can come back in. You've got your sketch, you've got your colour now, and you can come in and, if you want to, just emphasise all the details. I quite like having a combination of a little bit of line and wash and quite a bit of line, only a little bit of wash. So you can put sort of kind of, I don't know, a little bit of feeling in there with the line that you can't really do with paint. If you want to, you know, you could have some small stones along the top of the harbour wall like that, some decorative stones. Now this boat here, I know you think it looks as if it's up in the air, but it is, and it is, because it's being repaired, so it's on a stand. So we'll just put the stand in now and pretend that that's being held up. And probably I need to just grab some paint and pop a little bit of shadow inside the boat and underneath. And maybe we'll put a little bit of brown in one or two places. Maybe these windows would have shutters. That would be quite nice. And this wheel needs an outside edge, like that. Fence is coming along here. That house is meant to be a little bit further away, so we won't worry too much about details for him. And maybe a tiny bit more shadow under the line of the roof. Just emphasize the railing a bit here. Don't want people falling out of the lighthouse, do we? And some lines for the sea. And you could go on like this for ages. You could continue to do this for ages, but I'm not going to. I'm going to stop soon. I think we put an edge on the top of this boat. And I think he needs a head. He's looking a little bit, you know. There we go. He's got a tiller here. I'm not quite sure how to draw that, so I'm not going to bother. And maybe he should have a name on the boat here. I'll put something here. Starfish. This one ought to have a name on it too, shouldn't it? Fishmonger. And give him some hair. Her. And I think that will do. Oh, I know what I was going to do. Need a little bit of shadow on the inside of these doors and windows. There we go, and maybe we'll put a bit here too. Oh yes, and these portholes, which I'm sure he wouldn't have, but I just thought the hull of the boat looks a bit boring, so I'll add a little bit of timberline. Imagine that that's a boat made of wood. And the chap is inside here. Just draw the ghost of him here, shadow. There's somebody in there. Okay, there's a flag up there. He's got a flag here, a little white one. And the eyes in for the birds, maybe. I'm just going to lightly pop in the blue and leave some gaps for for sort of imaginary clouds. Come down to the horizon line. I like to leave the sky nice and active, as if there was a wind blowing, if you see what I mean. And so I wouldn't touch that again, even if you feel that it's not dark enough, and it probably won't be, but wait for it to dry completely before you put in another layer of paint, because if you go back into it while it's wet, it will be ruined. Even if you think you've got a little mistake or something, it won't be anything like the sort of mistake you'll have if you go in again. So then I'm going to use Caribbean blue for the sea. Seems appropriate because I sort of feel as if this is Caribbean, and I'm going to hope that I've put enough masking fluid there. So we'll just paint the sea in like that. I remember I put a bit of wax resist in there to give me a little bit of foam on the waves. And it doesn't matter if it runs a little bit into the sky, just pretend that you forgot to put your glasses on that day. And we'll bring that down there, and then we need a sandy colour, and let's pretend we're in the Bahamas and that the sand is pink rather than yellow. So we just do that, and then we're going to put some shadow, the same kind of thing, on one side of our sand dune. So just bring that down roughly like that. And we'll leave that to sort of dry. And then once that's dry, then we can come in and do some greenery. So I'm just going to paint in the distance here a little bit of land so far in the distance. And we probably want a little bit of this shadowy colour here as well. Try to remember not to paint to the edge. As I said, I wouldn't. Okay, so the mixtures for the greens, quinacridone gold mixed with some blue. And we'll just pop that in here for the sort of grassy top of the sand dune, keeping it loose with gaps. And then we want a little bit down here as well, I think. And then perhaps another patch here. We're going to let that dry a little bit. And the cobalt blue with a little bit of pink makes a nice grey. So we'll put some more strong sun cast shadow coming down the side of the dune. Something like that. maybe we want a bit over here. Let's pretend the sun's coming this way. So we'll put the cast shadows of the fence posts, which are going to be something like a brownish kind of colour. So Potter's Pink mixed with quinacridone gold is going to give us a nice light brownish colour. Vary the colour so they're not all the same. Okay, and I'm working with quite a big brush, as you can see here, and then I'm going to be mixing up a bit more of a greeny colour. Let's try Caribbean with quinacridone to give us a nice bright green. I'll drop a little bit of that in from place to place. Bay grape. Lots of interesting colours. We can put in some purple too. Okay, and maybe this needs some stems. Okay, so I'm going to add some more blue to the sky for two reasons. One, I didn't really go over the boats properly, so we need to darken that down so the sails stand out. And secondly, because as I said, it always dries back much lighter. And I'm not doing what you might call a realistic sky. But what I'm doing is the impression of a windy day. That's the idea anyway, so that's that. And I might darken the colour of the sea line a little bit along there. As well. Now, what should I do next? Maybe I'll do a little bit of pink spatter. It's a little bit of Potter's Pink. I'm going to just put some spatter on the sand here. and also in the foreground. And then I'm going to grab a rigger and put in some grasses in the foreground too. So quinacridone gold, and a dash of cobalt blue. There's always a tendency when you're doing this kind of thing to overdo it. And, you know what I mean. I'm trying, this is the first painting of the day, I'm trying to remember everything I ever knew about painting, and one of which things is less is more. This is the patch of green that I'm working on. Somebody asked me in one of the comments yesterday what colour green I used, and I mix most of my greens, to be honest, from cobalt and quinacridone and sometimes olive green, sometimes Windsor green, but I've usually got a kind of patch of colour. On my palette. Dry grasses, trying to do a few fine grasses, praying that the sky is dry. I think it is. Need a bit of shadow on one side of these posts, don't we? So that's the green mixed with Potter's pink. Which gives us quite a soft dark. Which we need a dark green, which I'm just trying to drop in for these grasses here. And then maybe a little bit more of the pinkish. And we've got the boats here, and I need to rub that out, but that's not dry yet, so. Try and put that nice dark line in the that you always get on the horizon in the Caribbean. Incredible. Unrealistic looking, but still, that's the way it is. Okay, that will probably do for the minute. So I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll rub out the white for the sails, and we'll see what happens then. So I've added a little bit of green grass there because it seemed to need it. And now I'm looking for my rubber to see whether I can rub out this masking fluid. So there we are, there's one boat. That seems to have worked okay. Fingers crossed for this one. Not too bad. So those are all right. I just need to get a small brush. Let's see what I've got here. A little size 2. What colour shall we do the hulls? Sort of dark blue, I think. And just a tiny stroke. Doesn't need any more than that. One or two little darks here and there to sort of just bring the whole thing to life. I'm going to start with some blue, fairly weak, and we'll drop that in at the top. You can leave a few holes if you want as you're doing it. And then I'm going to use yellow. I don't want it too strong. But I'm going to mix it with a little tiny bit of quinacridone gold, which I hope is going to stop it from going too green. So we'll pop that in. And then I'm going to put in some azo red. No, sorry, Pyrrole red. And you can see that kind of explodes. It's quite interesting. I'll bring that down to the horizon, and then I'll come back with some more blue at the top, just dropping it in. And then some more of this orangey red. And you don't really want to play with that any more than that. Just let it do its thing, and then if you're not happy, it's not pungent enough for you, you can come back again and put another layer on. And then we need the water in front, so I'm going to put a warm colour, which is kind of the reflection there. And then probably you could go one of two ways here. You could either go back to your cobalt blue, or you could use violet and cobalt together, which gives perhaps a nicer colour. And then just kind of bring that in a little bit. And then perhaps strengthen the orange effect in the distance. Put a little bit of orange on the purple. And then at that point, that gives us a start in the far distance. We have to wait for that to dry now. And so the idea of making the boundary less involves taking that off. And so while we let that dry, we move it up a bit. Now, I haven't done this before, so this might not work, but it might. I should probably wait for the whole thing to dry completely, to be honest. But this paper dries really quickly. So then you just position that there like that, and that will give you very narrow. Don't press it down too hard, just press it down at the bottom and let it sit and pray hard. So then your next one is going to be, we're going to do two more. So we'll need another piece of this. We'll put that here. This idea of doing these tiny paintings could be adapted for bookmarks and other small paintings, of course, greetings cards in general, birthday cards and so on and so forth, of course. Okay, so we'll do this one next. So we need some violet for the sky. And I just need to clean that up a little bit because it's gone a bit brownish. And we're going to keep that fairly light. And just pop that in at the top there. And then we want some of this orange that we mixed before, and we'll put that in underneath, blend that in. And then the next layer is going to be violet again. And it's going to be the distant hill line. Oh yes, I should probably have indicated, where the water line is. And we come from there and then we go up and just drop in the hills. distance. And then we want some more orange for the water. And for this side, we'll put some purple perhaps. I'm using burnt sienna there for that, and when that's dry I'll paint the trees. So then this one now has to be moved. I'll just peel that off, pop that down there like that, and we'll do number 3, which is going to be a little square painting. So this one's got a sort of hill in the front, and then golden light coming down here. A little bit of purple there. And then we're going to paint a little bit of blue up here, it's cobalt blue again. And let's go for alizarin crimson, perhaps with a touch of orange for the sunset, which is going here, and then some purple mauve violet for the distant hills over there, and then a bluer, slightly bluer for the one in front. And then we have to let that one dry too. So now we'll go back to the one at the top. And you can see we've got a nice line there, just put that back there. And what we want to do now is go for a smaller brush and pick up some purple of some sort. This is Windsor Violet, I think. And just paint in an irregular line for the trees in the distance. And part way across, we just change to orange, so quinacridone gold and a bit of red. Just to indicate where the light is hitting those distant trees. And then we're going to want a darker purpley colour on the water here. And I'm going to mix that with some quinacridone to make a more of a brownish purple. Darker. So we have a nice delicate sky. It's a bit more delicate than this one. I'm not going to touch it because I'll probably end up ruining it if I do. And then we need some purple and probably a bit of black to make this nice and dark for the reeds. And you can just do whatever you want there, really. You might only want to put in a couple. You have to be kind of moderately brave, really. If you don't like risking everything with a brush, you could use a pen, you know, one of those calligraphic pens. What do they call them? Brush liners or something? You could put in a couple of birds in the sky over here. And if you want, you can put in some reeds on this side too. You could do them differently. You could do just straight ones like that with a few bent tops. So that's that one done, pretty much. You could put in a few more strokes in the water if you want. And you could make the line here darker. Okie dokie, so that's that one. And then we're back to this one here, where we've got, the idea is that we'll have a little bit more lilac for the mountains in the background. So they're sort of veiled. And I think I might put a bit more blue in the sky. And a little bit more orange in this one, perhaps. And maybe a tiny bit of exploding red. I've seen a colour like that before, it's just incredible. And a little bit more blue. And then we need our smaller brush. I don't know, maybe I might even want to use the very smallest, and we want some quinacridone gold mixed with blue, I think, or violet, because we want a sort of rusty brown for these trees. And it's going to have to be fairly thick because it's so small, so we're just I've got phthalo blue mixed with quinacridone for this one. Make it a bit darker. And then go back to the quinacridone I want to make that a bit taller, but it's not quite dry. And then we just want to put some trees along the far distant edge of the lake like that. And then we're going to have to come in with some much darker purple to give the trees some shape. And then swap to a slightly bigger brush, number 3, and can drop in some orangey brown here, a little bit more, a few more strokes like that. Take that over here too, and maybe just a tiny bit of greenish over here to balance. Okay, so that's that one. And then final one here, we're going to do some more of those gosh darn trees. But we need to just improve the distant mountains. And the foreground needs to be a bit more lilac-y. And then we need a little bit more gold in the sky here. And then a bit more blue up here. Okay, and then the trees. We start with the tall one over here, and it's going to go down to there. That cockerel's having fun out there, not sure what he's going on about. And then we're heading into a sort of more purpley area over here. The trees down here are going to be more mauve. This kind of design really lends itself very well to all sorts of subjects, like obviously flowers and little outdoor iconic things like lamps on walls and window boxes and stuff like that. You can do nice kind of selection of different things. So there we are, there's our little trees. And we'll just swap to a slightly bigger brush, just slightly. And a little bit of lilac. Mauve, not too dark. For here, just put some more strokes in there. So there we are. Okay, that'll do. We just need to remove our masking tape. So there we are, 3 little landscapes. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, give us a like and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Bye everybody. Bye-bye. Liam, come on. Sorry, Zen.